You wake, but you are not truly awake. Your body moves, yet your soul remains somewhere lost in layers of weary fog. This fatigue is not one you can shake off with a few extra hours of sleep, nor is there any coffee strong enough to rouse you. It is deeper, as if with each breath, you drag through a life that does not belong to you. Your phone buzzes. Your morning schedule glares. Emails, messages, reminders. You reply by habit. Smile at the right moment, not in the right place. Say enough kindness so no one notices the emptiness quietly burning inside. Everything runs smoothly, yet you know you are fading, like a smile hanging on a face without feeling, a mask so firmly fixed you forget what your true face even looked like. They call that living. You learn to function. You learn to be busy so you feel valuable. Day after day, you run, you strive, you achieve, you are praised, you are congratulated. But when night falls and the light in your room goes dark, a heavy silence looms. You lie there, feeling as though someone else is breathing through your chest. Your voice sounds unfamiliar, as though every word was pre-written for someone else's script. Sometimes you ask, am I truly living or merely replaying a soulless copy? Carl Jung called this persona, the social mask we create to exist in the world. At first, it helps us to be loved, to feel safe, to be seen. But then one day, we no longer know who is wearing and who is the mask. Everything merges. People smile, greet, introduce you with your title, your achievements, not who you really are, and you accept because it is easier than facing the real question, who am I, when I have none of those? Day by day, you become a skillful actor in your own life. You know how to feign enthusiasm when a colleague speaks of a project you don't care about. You know how to sound okay when everything inside unravels. You know how to choose words just friendly enough that no one suspects you are withdrawing. People praise you as steady, responsible, mature. But you understand those words only describe the shell you have patiently built around a void. Sometimes you try to pause, just for a moment, amid hundreds of emails, amid the sounds of cars, amid the voices in your head. You want silence, but that silence frightens you, because beneath it lies another voice, small, fragile, yet painfully real. That voice asks, is this really my life? You try to push it away because there is no time for confusion. Tomorrow there's a meeting. Someone awaits your answer. Plans are already drawn, but that question lingers, like a shadowed figure standing at the end of a hallway, not moving forward, not leaving, just watching you. And day by day that gaze grows clearer. Your nights of sleeplessness are not caused by work, but by a strange feeling, the feeling that you are betraying yourself. You vaguely remember another time, when you once had dreams, once had longing, once did something only because it made your heart beat faster. Now, you can't recall the last time you felt truly alive. Everything is correct. Everything is logical. Everything is necessary. But nothing is real. You begin to realize you have been dragging too many roles. The dutiful child, the diligent employee, the friend who always listens, the predictable lover. Each role a mask, and you change them so often your real face becomes a stranger. People say maturity is adaptability. But if the price of adaptation is the loss of your soul, is that maturity still true? In silence, you suddenly see something quietly decaying inside. A part of you has stopped believing that life can be different. That part has grown accustomed to enduring, accustomed to being praised for withstanding pressure, accustomed to smiling at the right time, crying in the right place. And that part is dying slowly. You try to reassure yourself. Everyone is like this. But somewhere inside you know, no, not everyone. Some people live, not just exist. Some keep a light in their eyes, even when the world around them is weary. And you envy them quietly, not because they are more successful, but because they are more real. Sometimes you catch your reflection and don't recognize the eyes looking back. It feels as though a stranger wears your skin. You speak, you work, you laugh, but inside, a soft whisper. I have gone too far from myself. The world outside always tells you to move forward, to do more, to become better. But no one says this. Sometimes moving forward is not a step ahead, but a return to where you once were yourself. The fatigue you feel each day is not just the exhaustion of the body. but the silent resistance of the soul forced to live in an ill-fitting shape. Then one morning, in what seems an ordinary moment, as you gaze at the hurried crowd beyond the glass, a small thought slips by. If everything I am doing, everything I am striving for, is only to show others I'm okay, then what is the meaning of living? That question has no answer, yet it shifts something inside you. You begin to doubt the pace you have long adhered to. Why must we always be busy? Why must we always be cheerful? Why must every moment have plan, goal, direction? You remember the freedom of youth when even a meaningless day could be full, simply because you were allowed to be yourself. But now every second must have a reason to exist. Then you realize your life was built on musts and shoulds, not on wants and truths. Every choice, work, love, belief was shaped more by fear of loss than by the yearning to live. You start to see clearly what once felt blurry. Your life was constructed from borrowed expectations, from other people's eyes, from the claps from outside, rather than from your inner call. Maybe that is why whenever you lie still, no phone, no music, no work, you feel uneasy. Not because something is wrong, but because for the first time, you are hearing your own voice again. That voice is weak, trembling, but real. It asks what no one else has for years. Do you remember who you used to be? The narrator in your head is no longer cold. It becomes gentler, more familiar, as if your soul has finally found a crack to speak through. That feeling is not pleasant, but you can't ignore it, because when you realize you have lost yourself, you cannot go back to living as before. And exactly in that moment, when you first face the emptiness you have long been escaping, a new journey begins. Not a journey to seek happiness, but a journey to return to yourself. A journey of fear, because you will have to stare into the mask you once believed was your face. But somewhere in that fear, there's a very small light, the light of the soul, when it knows that finally you have dared to listen. And with a slow exhale, you realize life may not need more things to do, but fewer false things. Fewer roles you have carried too long. Less noise, so that only the quiet remains for truth to breathe. Because perhaps only when you dare to face this fatigue can you begin to touch the truest part inside you. What is awakening in you is not a crisis. It is the call of the soul, whispering, it is time to stop living someone else's life. And in that place, between exhaustion and fragility, a small door opens, guiding you towards somewhere you never dared to look. Your true self. You start to realize that this feeling of being tired is not a sign of weakness. It is more like a soft knock on the door of your soul, a reminder that for far too long, you have not truly listened to yourself. You still live, still work, still smile, still post pictures, and reply to polite messages. But behind it all, an emptiness stirs every time you touch silence. It is not loud, not dramatic, just a gentle breeze passing through, leaving behind a question, who am I living for? That question follows you all day. When you look at the clock and tell yourself, it's time to go to work, you suddenly think yes, but for whom? When you smile, though your heart feels heavy, you wonder yes, but for whose comfort? When you agree to something you don't really want, just to avoid trouble, you hear your own sigh inside. This is not me. Then you begin to notice the roles you are playing. The understanding one, the easygoing one, the successful one, the kind one. Each role has its own script, and you have memorized every line. Yet none of those roles lets you be yourself. Some nights you look at your endless to-do list and realize not a single task brings you joy. Everything is duty, responsibility, obligation, expectation. Carl Jung once spoke of the persona, the social mask we wear to belong. At first it is a shield, but worn too long it becomes skin. You forget how it feels to breathe through your true face. In that moment, people are no longer living. They are performing a role. The audience applauds. And the frightening part is that the audience is not others, but you, the part of you afraid of being rejected. You remember the times you told small lies to be loved. Not grand deceptions, but I'm fine, it's okay, I'm happy. Tiny sentences like paint over the cracks in your soul. You smile so others won't feel awkward. You nod so no one gets hurt. You stay silent to keep the peace. Yet with each of those moments, You drift a little farther from yourself. One afternoon, you stand before a mirror. Sunlight spilling across your face. Something in the reflected eyes makes you stop longer than usual. Not because you look ugly or old, but because the gaze is unfamiliar, as if someone else has been living in your place all these years. You touch the glass softly, and for a moment you're not sure who is looking at whom. This realization does not come with thunder. It comes with quiet. Not a storm, but a gentle rain soaking in, making everything clearer. You see that the work you once felt proud of has become a shackle. The relationships that once made you happy now feel heavy. The goals, the achievements, the titles, suddenly meaningless when you realize they were never your true dreams. You remember your youth, when dreams were still pure. When you did things not because they were reasonable, but because they made your heart race. When you dared to try, dared to fail, dared to be different. Now you know how to earn praise, how to be accepted, how to be safe, but you no longer know how to feel alive. Then a voice rises in your mind. What if I stop now? Not stop everything, but stop trying to be someone else. What if you stopped pretending, stopped smiling on cue, stopped agreeing when your soul wanted to say no? What would happen if you lived only according to what you truly feel? Who would stay? Who would leave? And when everything fell away, what would remain? Those questions are both terrifying and magnetic. You imagine speaking the truth for the first time in years. You might lose a person, a job, a place. But in exchange, you would regain yourself. You would no longer adjust your voice to please other ears. You would no longer post online to prove you're okay. You would no longer write things that sound deep just to show you're growing. You would simply be you. And perhaps that is what you have been craving all along. Not success, not money, not perfect love, but honesty. The honesty buried beneath layers of roles. Yet when you think of taking off the mask, you feel afraid. Because the mask is not only fake, it once saved you. It helped you be accepted, be loved, be safe. It made the world predictable. So to take it off feels like preparing to die, to let go of something familiar but outdated. Jung once said, "Becoming who you are requires killing who you've been." And it is true, to be reborn, you must let something end. The death of the old self does not come with a bang, but with a slow melting. Each layer of pretending falls away. Each outdated belief crumbles. Each old connection fades. Painful, but necessary. You begin to see that exhaustion does not come from doing too much, but from betraying yourself too often. Each time you say yes when your heart wants no, a small piece of your soul is left behind. Each time you smile while your heart breaks, a part of you dies. Each time you choose comfort over truth, you lay another brick in the prison you built for yourself. And now the house is so solid, no one even notices it is a prison. You look around and see others, also busy, also tired, also living with forced smiles. But something in you whispers, it cannot only be this. And perhaps that is the voice of the part of your soul that has not yet been lost. If right now you feel something in your heart, a quiet resonance, a nameless ache, pause for a moment. Breathe slowly. Touch that feeling. Don't be afraid, because it is real. And if this voice is reaching a hidden place inside you, leave a small sign, a comment, a click, a share. Not for me, but for you. As a way of saying, I'm still here. I still hear myself. The moment you dare to admit that your life no longer feels real, that is when the awakening begins. You don't have to know what you'll do or how you'll change. You only need one thing: honesty with your own feelings. That honesty is not a loud declaration, but a slow breath where you stop running from yourself. It may begin with no longer faking a smile, no longer forcing, I'm fine, no longer agreeing to what weighs your heart down. And from that honesty, you will begin to feel something else, a vast space, but not a cold one. That space is where the old is retreating, making room for the true to return. It is like morning when the mist starts to clear. Everything's still uncertain, but the light already there. That is when the real journey begins. When you no longer chase false safety, but start seeking truth, even if it hurts. When you stop controlling others' perception and learn to face yourself. When you understand that life is not in being loved more or recognized more, but in whether you still feel real. And then, in the spreading silence, A question rises, no longer vague but sharp as a blade cutting through fog. If I stop doing what others expect, what will be left? That question will not let you go. It will return again and again in each moment, each glance, each choice, but let it stay. Because it is the first small flame, the flame that can burn away the fog around your life. And as that flame flickers to life, however small, you will begin to see clearly. What once felt safe is actually a chain. What once brought praise is actually a wall. And perhaps the only way to live true is to dare to step beyond them. Something strange happens when you start being honest with yourself. Everything that once seemed solid begins to feel fragile. Relationships built on, "I'm fine. It's nothing. I understand," begin to tremble, as if you've touched their most delicate thread. Conversations that used to flow now fall into silence, not because something is wrong, but because you no longer want to pretend. Places that once made you feel like you belonged now feel tight, stiff, like clothes that no longer fit. And so you stand between two worlds. The old world, where people think they know who you are, but that's not really you. And the new world, where no one knows who you are, not even yourself. That feeling is strange. It's both terrifying and freeing. Like taking off a mask you've worn for too long, the skin underneath is raw. But it's also new and alive in a way that makes it impossible to go back. You start to feel what you've been suppressing. Anger, fear, jealousy, sadness, emotions you learned to bury long ago out of fear of being judged. Now they rise, messy and real, like a river that's finally broken through a dam. You don't know what to do with them. So you just sit still and listen to your heartbeat stumble in your chest. And in that silence, a truth quietly appears, painful yet clear. You are not tired from doing too much, but from betraying yourself too often. You said yes when your soul screamed no. You smiled when your heart was heavy. You stayed when every part of you wanted to leave. Each time, a small piece of you disappeared. And when enough pieces go missing, you realize you're living inside a hollow frame, a body that knows how to smile. These small betrayals pile up over the years, quietly and unnoticed. You thought you were just doing the right thing, making the necessary sacrifices to keep the peace, to be loved, to be mature. But really, you were building a prison. Each time you stayed silent, you laid another brick. Each forced smile added a layer of cement. And now, the house is so solid, even you forget it's a prison. People look at you and say you're strong, reliable, admirable. They don't know that inside, your soul is fading away. Maybe the most exhausting thing is not the work you do, but the constant performance to hide the truth that you're no longer yourself. You smile at the right time, speak with the right tone, play the right roles. But some nights, when the lights go out, you lie there and wonder, does anyone know that my smile is just a survival reflex? One day, when you are honest enough, the answer will whisper back soft, but sharp enough to sting your heart. No one knows, because you've hidden it too well. And in that moment, you understand. No one has made you as tired as you have. But you also realize something else. The soul never truly gives up. No matter how deeply you bury it, no matter how busy you are, it keeps tapping, gently whispering, quietly calling. Exhaustion, anxiety, emptiness, they're not diseases. They're the language of the soul saying, stop, listen to me. You've spent so long ignoring that voice that when it finally returns, it scares you. But fear does not mean you're wrong. Sometimes, fear is the first sign of truth. It's the light breaking through the cracks you tried to seal shut. And only when you dare to face the fear can that light grow stronger. Then you start looking around. You see others like you, busy, brilliant, seemingly fine, but with empty eyes. Everyone's tired, but no one dares to say it out loud. Because in this world, honesty is a risky act. We are taught how to stay silent, how to look okay, how to smile while our hearts break. But in a quiet moment, you understand. Nothing is more sacred than honesty. Not honesty with others, but with yourself. If right now, while listening, you feel something stir inside you, a lump in your throat, a quiet sigh, or even a nameless tear, then maybe, just maybe, you are beginning to return to yourself. And if you feel that, give yourself a small sign, a deep breath, a silent nod, or even a simple response, a comment, a share, a like, not for me, but for you, as your way of saying, I'm still here, I can still feel. Because sometimes, just admitting you still have feelings is enough to begin the healing. You don't need to know what comes next. No need to transform, to break free, to rush into change. Just be honest. Start by resting when you're tired. Say no when your heart isn't aligned. Stay silent when the world becomes too loud. Honesty isn't dramatic. It's the slow breath of the soul, the whisper that says, that's enough. And slowly, a space begins to open. You'll feel old things leaving you, the expectations, the roles, the relationships that once defined you. At first, that space will scare you. You'll want to fill it with something, work, distractions, people. But one day, you'll realize, the space is not the enemy. It is the room for you to return. No one said this path is easy. In fact, it hurts. It's like shedding skin layer by layer. You feel exposed, vulnerable. But within that vulnerability lies the truth. And that truth becomes your new foundation. Jung once wrote, "The privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are." But he never said it comes without loss. Because before becoming yourself, you must let go of who you've been, even if that version once kept you alive. You might lose people. You might lose approval. You might lose your sense of safety. But you will gain something far greater, truth. And from that truth, everything else will be rebuilt, slower, quieter, but real. The world won't understand you right away. They might say you've changed, become distant, too different. But don't be afraid. They don't hate you. They just aren't used to your real light yet. Because when you begin to live honestly, you reflect back the inauthenticity in others. And that makes them uncomfortable. Just as you once felt uneasy when someone else lived their truth. But eventually, there is only one path forward. Either you return to the old mask, or you learn to stand tall in your new light. And in that light, you realize something both simple and profound. You were never truly tired of living. You were tired of pretending to live. And when you stop pretending, the fatigue begins to lift. Your body feels lighter. Your mind softens. Your breath deepens. Not because the world changed, but because you stopped fighting yourself. From there, your journey will go even deeper. Not just removing the mask, but stepping into the darkness behind it, where all the rejected parts of you live, the buried feelings, the shadows you've never dared to face. And when you finally look into that darkness, not with fear, but with courage, you'll discover something miraculous. The darkness is not your enemy. It is just the forgotten part of your soul, waiting to be welcomed home. And that is where the real journey begins. There comes a moment in life when all the noise around you suddenly falls silent, and you hear a strange sound, the sound of yourself. It's not loud. It's not dramatic. It's soft, like a breath in the dark, like a single note drifting through the symphony of the world. At first, you think it's nothing, just fatigue, a quiet afternoon, a fleeting sadness. But then it returns, again and again, persistent like a whisper that something inside you is waking up. You could be standing in a crowd, surrounded by laughter, glasses clinking, lights flashing, and suddenly you feel detached from your body. You see yourself from a distance, smiling, talking, blending in. But your soul isn't there. It's a subtle disconnection, but unmistakable. A part of you stays still, quietly watching that other you, the one the world knows. They seem fine, still charming, still polite, still appropriate. But deep down, that's not you. That moment, small as it is, cracks your world open. Because, for the first time, you see the gap between who you are and who you pretend to be. That gap scares you. You wonder if you let go of the act. What's left? Do you have the courage to live without needing to be loved, praised, or right? Yet, something in you exhales, as if, finally, after all these years, you've caught a glimpse of real light, even for a second. You begin to look at the world with different eyes. Everything looks the same, but it no longer means the same. Meetings no longer feel like places to prove yourself. Conversations no longer demand your agreement. Parties that once felt exciting now feel foreign. You realize most of what used to matter was just a collective performance, a room full of people trying to seem okay. And when you see this, you feel lighter. Not because life has become easier, but because you've stopped blaming yourself for feeling different. From deep within, a voice gently rises. This is not me. It echoes through your choices in your work, in your relationships, in the way you live. It's soft, but impossible to ignore. Then come the questions, the ones you used to avoid. What happens if I stop living by their expectations? If I say no, will I still be loved? If I stop trying so hard, do I still have worth? These questions aren't comfortable. They keep you up at night. They make you feel alone. But within that solitude, there's something deeply real. You start to feel the thin line between existing and living, between being seen and being understood, between being loved for your role and being loved for your truth. One night, in the stillness of your room, with only a faint glow spilling through the window, you lie there, no noise, no phone, no distractions, just you and your breath. And in that silence, a question appears, so clear, it makes you open your eyes. If I'm not who they think I am, then who am I? The question is simple, but it cuts deep. You don't have an answer. Not yet. But you know it's time to find out. From that moment, you can no longer live the way you did before. Not because you decide to change, but because your soul has seen the truth. And once seen, the truth cannot be unseen. You realize your exhaustion isn't from your job, but from constantly betraying yourself. Your loneliness isn't from a lack of people, but from the absence of your true presence in your own life. Carl Jung once said that when the mask begins to crack, we call it a crisis. But really, it's the awakening of the true self. The world may label it as burnout, a midlife crisis, or depression, but Jung called it the awakening of the soul. When you begin to hear your real voice inside, you think you're losing control. But in truth, you're finally coming home. You look back at how you've lived all the scripts that weren't yours. Scripts written by your parents, by society, by lovers, by your own fear. You chased dreams that weren't yours, tried to become someone others admired. And one day, after achieving it all, you feel nothing. No joy, no pride, just emptiness. Like you've climbed the wrong mountain. But in that moment of realization, you are not a failure, you are awake. Because only those brave enough to face the emptiness can find their own path. The truth is, nothing is more terrifying than realizing you've been living someone else's life. But nothing is more sacred than the moment you say, enough. I want to live my truth. From there, everything begins to shift. Not because you're trying to be different, but because something inside you is finally moving. You stop reacting the way you used to. You stop trying to make people understand. You choose silence over explanation. And in that silence, a new strength begins to rise. The kind that comes from knowing which side you're on. The side of truth. The world will still try to pull you back. It will call you selfish, changed, distant. But now, you no longer feel the need to fight. You just smile, because you know they don't see the real you. They just miss the version of you that made them feel comfortable. You begin to accept that to be free, you must lose. Lose people who only loved your mask. Lose spaces that only welcomed your silence. Lose parts of yourself that were fed by fear. And in the middle of that loss, you find something. Relief. A strange kind of lightness, like your soul is finally unchained. From deep in your heart, you know this is only the beginning. Behind that first mask are many more deeper, darker, harder. But that's okay. You're ready now. Because for the first time, you know what you're seeking is not happiness, but truth. And while happiness comes and goes, truth, once seen, stays. So in the stillness of that night, you close your eyes and take a deep breath. For the first time in years, you feel yourself. No roles, no pretending, no walls. Just you, raw, fragile, but real. And you smile, not because everything is fixed, but because you know, at last, you've begun to live. From that moment, a new journey begins. Not one of escaping pain, but facing it. Not a quest to fix yourself to fit in, but to uncover the layers of your hidden soul. You no longer want to just be better. You want to be real. And to do that, you must enter the place you've avoided most, the darkness within. Because it is there in everything you once feared, denied, buried, that your truest self waits. The part Jung called the shadow. And only when you dare to walk into that space will you finally understand what it means to be free. There are nights when you can't sleep, not because of noise or work, but because something inside you is stirring. It feels like someone is knocking gently but persistently right inside your chest. You try to ignore it, but it doesn't go away. Sometimes it comes as a nameless sadness. Other times, an unexplainable anger or a wave of self-loathing. You tell yourself you're just tired, but deeper than that, your soul is rebelling. It can no longer bear being locked away. Carl Jung called this the shadow, the part of us we reject, the part we push out of the light because it's not pretty, not safe, not allowed. From a young age, we're taught to be pleasant. We learn to swallow anger, hide fear, suppress desire, pretend to be strong. We think that's good. But everything we reject doesn't disappear. It gets buried, pushed deeper into the corners of the unconscious. And one day, it comes back no longer gentle. Have you ever exploded over something small? Or felt drained when nothing was really wrong? Or maybe someone says one wrong sentence and it hits you like a knife? That's not you being irrational. That's your shadow trying to be seen. It's not here to harm you. It's the forgotten part of your soul crying out to be acknowledged. Because the truth is, what you hide doesn't die. What you bury doesn't die, it rots. What's buried starts to leak into anxiety, depression, chronic fatigue, emotional numbness. That's why you can sleep well, eat well, work well, and still feel like you're slowly dying inside. You don't need another vacation. You don't need a spa day. You don't need to change jobs. You need the truth that sometimes you're angry, sometimes selfish, sometimes desperate to be loved, sometimes ready to walk away from everything. The truth that you're not always kind, and that doesn't make you a bad person. It makes you human. But society doesn't teach us to accept that. It teaches us to control it, suppress it, manage the image. So in order to be accepted, we carve off pieces of our raw self until we're left with a shell that knows how to smile, how to say the right thing, but no longer knows how to feel. And then we wonder, why are we exhausted? Why is the passion gone? Why does everything feel meaningless? The answer is simple. We've spent too long acting, and now our soul is begging for the curtain to fall. You can run from this for a while. Through work, through busyness, through fleeting relationships, through new goals. But no matter where you run, the shadow follows. Because it's you, it can't be left behind. And the more you run, the stronger it becomes. Jung said, the shadow is not the enemy, it is the doorway to wholeness. Inside, it is not just pain, but also your power, your creativity, your passion, your intuition, everything that makes you feel alive. The cost of rejecting the shadow is losing the light. You can't choose only half your soul and still hope to be free. Maybe you've tried to heal through positive thinking, forgiveness, letting go. But forgiveness without facing the wound is just another way to avoid it. Letting go without understanding, the pain simply puts a lid on the wound, not healing it. You can't walk through the shadow by pretending it's not there. You have to walk through it. Walking through the shadow means daring to face your anger, your fear, your shame, your instinctive self, the parts you once hated. It means sitting in your loneliness without trying to fill it. It means telling the truth to yourself, even if it makes your voice shake. When you look it in the eye, the shadow loses its power. It's no longer a threat, it becomes a guide. One morning, as you make coffee, everything may still look the same, but you will feel different. Not in your actions, but in your gaze. You see what once scared you, and this time, you don't look away. You let it stand there, with you. And in that moment, you understand you don't have to conquer fear. You just have to face it with courage. The shadow simply wants to be acknowledged. When you can say, I have anger too. I can be selfish. I have a dark side. You don't become weaker. You become whole. Because when you stop splitting yourself into good and bad, you finally become real. The world doesn't need more perfect people. It needs more honest ones. People who dare to say, I've been pretending for too long. Who dare to cry when it hurts. Who dare to say no when they're tired. Who dare to be quiet when the world is loud. Who dare to live without performing. The exhaustion you carry doesn't come from working too hard. It comes from living the wrong way. It's the soul's fatigue from carrying too many masks. And the only way to heal is to put them down. Not to abandon life, but to abandon the performance. Try this for one day. Live without adjusting yourself. Say what you truly think. Decline what you don't want. Allow yourself to be weak. And if someone asks, "Are you okay?" try answering honestly. Not for attention, but out of respect for yourself. You may be surprised to find that truth doesn't break you. It frees you. Modern life praises positivity. But there is such a thing as toxic positivity, the kind that forces us to pretend we're fine just to be accepted. You don't need to be positive all the time. You just need to be honest. Because sometimes, honesty is the purest form of courage. You'll find that when you live truthfully, light begins to appear in the places that once seemed dark. You'll realize the shadow never disappears. It only becomes transparent when it's loved. And when you embrace your shadow, you stop fearing it in others. You begin to see people with compassion, not comparison. You no longer need to prove you're better. The truth is, the shadow is not the opposite of light. It creates the light. Only in the depth of night do we see stars. Only by facing pain do we understand peace. Just like a seed must be buried in darkness before it can grow. Jung once wrote, "People will do anything, no matter how absurd, to avoid facing their own soul. And that is why we are tired. Not because life is too hard, but because we've been running from ourselves for too long. But you don't have to run anymore. You can stop. You can come home. And when you begin to do that, to look, to touch, to accept, to love the darkest part of yourself, you'll see that the exhaustion begins to fade. Not because you've healed, but because you are no longer divided. Your soul finally becomes whole again. This journey is not for the rushed. It's slow, still, and often lonely. But in that stillness, you'll discover something miraculous. You don't need to search for the light elsewhere. It's been here all along, hidden in your darkest places. And it's in that moment, when you stop running, when you face the shadow in your heart, that you'll understand something simple, something profound. You were never tired of life. You were only tired of pretending to live. And now, each breath you take is no longer to sustain a role, but to call your soul home. When you begin to see the shadow within yourself, the world around you begins to shift too. Not because it has truly changed, but because you're no longer seeing it through the foggy lens of performance. Everything becomes more honest. Some people grow distant. Some become clearer. Some relationships quietly dissolve, while things once thought broken start to glow. And you understand, this isn't chaos. It's the soul rearranging itself. Because when you stop pretending, everything built on pretending naturally falls apart. You find yourself losing interest in meaningless conversations, empty compliments, gatherings where everyone is trying too hard to look happy. The truth makes you quieter, but not lonely, just more aware of the things that once wore you down. When you stop playing the agreeable one, some start calling you cold. When you stop smiling to make others comfortable, they say you've changed. They don't realize you're not colder. You've just stopped faking warmth. You haven't changed. You're just returning. That return isn't loud. There's no grand declaration, no spotlight. It's in the small moments when you say no and mean it. When you choose solitude over people-pleasing. When you sigh, not out of exhaustion, but because you finally allowed yourself to breathe. And in those moments, you feel something strange. Lightness, but deep. Like slipping out of a tight coat you didn't realize you've been wearing for years. But the truth doesn't just set you free. It also takes things away. You lose people. Not many, but some you thought would stay forever. They stop texting, stop calling. Some simply fade into silence. You don't blame them, but it still hurts. Because now you understand they loved a version of you that made them feel safe. The one who nodded, who endured, who kept the peace. And now that you're no longer that person, they no longer know how to be near you. That realization, though clear, still weighs heavy on your heart. You might sit for hours, one evening, staring into space, feeling things inside you fall apart, not in chaos, but as if collapsing gently back to the soil. You realize awakening is not the bright moment people often speak of. It feels more like a funeral than a sunrise. You don't just lose people. You lose parts of yourself once tied to them: habits, voices, roles, approvals. They fall like autumn leaves, exposing the bare branches of your soul. The world calls it suffering, but it's really rebirth. Because only when the old dies can space open for something new. You're becoming someone else, but not from striving for honesty. You no longer need to appear good. You only need to be real. And sometimes, real feels empty. That emptiness scares many, Because it feels like nothing. No old friends, no forced joy, no roles that once helped you survive, just silence. But that silence is not a voided space, the space where your soul can finally breathe. You begin to settle into that stillness. At first, it feels like loss. But slowly, in the quiet, you start to hear your own sound, your heartbeat, your breath, and sometimes a soft whisper, "Thank you. Thank you for stopping. Thank you for no longer forcing the soul to keep running." When you live truthfully, not everyone will understand. Some will say you've isolated yourself. Some will call you distant. But you know it's not distance. It's clarity. When you stop living to please others, you shine brighter. And real light always makes the false squint. They can't handle the intensity. So they step back, and you learn to let them go without anger. Because now you understand, everyone is wrestling with their own mask. When you change, they feel unsteady, not because of you, but because your honesty reflects their hiding. The world fears truth, because truth demands we face what hurts. You used to fear it too, so now you understand. As you go deeper, you feel lighter, not in a fleeting way, but like someone who's embraced their shadow. You no longer need to hide, no longer need to prove, no longer need to race. Your peace doesn't come from comfort, it comes from acceptance. You're no longer trying to be someone else. You are simply yourself, full of cracks and full of light breaking through them. And when you live like this, things shift. Conversations grow deeper, though fewer. You stop asking, "Do they like me?" and start asking, "Can I be real with them?" Fewer relationships, but more true ones. You no longer feel pulled into noise. Instead, you find life in quiet mornings, in the warmth of a coffee cup, in the soft sound of wind at the window. The world is still the same, but you are not. And that alone makes the world respond differently. Some say you're more mysterious. Some say you're more distant. Some think you're not as fun. But you know they're describing the absence of the false energy you once gave so freely. You no longer shine to warm others. You shine just enough for yourself. At first, that light feels small, fragile. But then you realize because it's real, it never goes out. It needs no crowd, no validation, no performance. It's breath, it's presence, it's your soul, seen and alive. One day, you'll walk into a room full of people and realize you don't have to do anything to belong. You simply are. And the world adjusts itself. The real ones will come closer. The false will quietly leave. Everything moves like breath. Carl Jung once wrote, "Wholeness is not achieved by cutting off a portion of one's being, but by integration." Wholeness doesn't come from eliminating parts of you. It comes from welcoming them all. Now, you understand. You don't need to cut off your shadow. You don't need to collect more light. You only need to embrace what is already yours. Your anger, your gentleness, your weakness, your strength, your innocence, your wisdom. All of it is you. And only by embracing all of it can you ever be free. This freedom is not loud, not thrilling. It is quiet. Quiet like a river after a storm. You don't need to prove you're okay because you've stopped dividing life into okay and not okay. You just are. And in that being, there's a peace so deep, you can't describe it. If someone asks, "You seem different lately," you can simply smile. No need to explain. No need to share your journey. They won't understand, not yet. Because this isn't a story to be told. It's a state to be lived. And when the night comes and you sit quietly, staring into the black sky, you'll see the small stars, the kind of light only visible in the darkest hours. You'll smile because now you know light and shadow were never separate. They've always moved together, like breath. And you have finally learned how to breathe with both. Now, your journey is no longer about chasing the light. It's about stepping deeper into the center of your being, where light and dark live side by side, where you are no longer trying to become, but simply are. And that is where true peace begins. One morning, you wake up in silence. No phone ringing, no one calling your name, no packed schedule pushing you into urgency. Just a soft light seeping through the curtain, landing on a blanket still warm. Everything feels so ordinary it's almost strange. Yet deep within you, something has shifted. It's not the thrill of victory or excitement. It's an unfamiliar stillness, like the calm after a storm. When the ground is bare but clean, you slowly sit up, listening to your own breath. And for the first time, You no longer feel the need to chase anything. You don't even know what to call this feeling: emptiness or peace, only that it's too real to fake. You understand now that what you've been through wasn't a journey of change. It was a journey of shedding. You haven't become someone new, you've simply stopped pretending to be someone else. The masks, the roles, the shoulds, and musts that once bound you now lie scattered behind you like old skin. They once protected you, helped you feel loved, accepted, but they're no longer needed. Because when you touch the truest part of yourself, you realize there is nothing to prove. From that space, a quiet freedom begins to take shape. Freedom is not the ability to do everything you want. It's the absence of anything controlling you from within. No more reacting out of fear of loss. No more striving to be seen. No more holding up an image. You just live simply, wholly, sincerely. And it's in that simplicity that everything becomes more profound. You start to see life with different eyes. You no longer seek meaning, you feel it in the smallest of things. In the bubbling of water as you make morning coffee. In the way sunlight touches your hand. In the moment someone smiles at you, honestly, without agenda. You don't want more anymore. You want deeper. Because now you understand happiness isn't an emotion. It's the state of truly being here. You learn to slow down. Every step, every glance, every word carries meaning. Not because you're trying harder, but because you've stopped rushing. When the noise inside you quiets, the world outside feels softer too. And you realize peace never comes from outside. It isn't in money, relationships, or success. It only appears when you stop running. Of course, loneliness still visits, but this time, you don't fear it. Loneliness is no longer an emptiness to be filled. It becomes space for your soul to be heard. You sit with it like an old friend, silent but familiar. And sometimes, in that stillness, you feel more connected to the world than ever before. Someone may look at you and say, "You seem different," and you simply smile. They're not wrong. You are different. Not because you've changed, but because you've come home. Home to the person you were before fear, before pretending, before life taught you how to fit in. Now, you no longer shrink to make others comfortable. You no longer stretch to prove anything. You simply are without asking permission, without needing to explain. You know this journey has no final destination. Every day, life brings new layers, challenges, expectations, fears, things that could pull you back into the old roles. But you're not afraid, because now you know how to return. All it takes is a pause, a breath, and a quiet question. Is this true for me? That question is your compass. You begin living by small, yet deeply real principles. You don't ask for permission to rest. You don't explain when you say no. You don't beg to be understood. You don't do what makes your soul feel betrayed. And each time you honor that, even just a little, you feel more whole. One day you realize no one ever wakes up forever. We wake up again and again. Every time we notice we're lost, we come back. Every time we find ourselves performing, we peel off another layer. That is what it means to live, not to be perfect, but to keep moving between forgetting and remembering, between asleep and awake, between false and real. You remember Jung's words. The privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are. Now you understand that privilege is not a gift. It's a path. One marked by loss, solitude, tears, and silence. But along that path, you find something no power, no fame, no love can offer: inner freedom. The freedom to speak the truth without needing to be understood. The freedom to love without fearing loss. The freedom to live without proving worth. The freedom to be alone without feeling empty. No one can give you this freedom. No one can take it from you. It arrives the moment you realize you don't need to become anyone other than yourself. Then you see that life remains the same. Some people like you, some don't. Some stay, some leave. But instead of clinging, you smile. Because now you're not living in reaction. You're living in choice. You choose how to stay, how to love, how to leave, how to be silent. Not from fear, but from peace. Some won't understand your path, and that's okay. No one can fully understand a soul. Each of us walks a road only we can walk. And now, you just want to walk yours, even if it's quiet, even if no one claps. At night, you light a small candle. Not to brighten the room, but to remind yourself, light doesn't need to be loud to be meaningful. It just needs to be true. You watch the flame flicker and remember the days you forced smiles, chased approval, tried to make everyone happy, and softly you whisper inside, "Thank you. Thank you to the old versions of yourself, the ones who endured, who performed, who kept you alive for so long. Without them, you wouldn't have made it here." You feel grateful even for the pain, because it was pain that made you pause, pain that forced you inward, pain that opened the door to truth. And now, standing here, looking back, you don't feel anger. You feel love, not loud, not romantic, but deep and real. You take a deep breath. There's no weight, only presence. No longer the question, "Who am I?" Just a quiet, steady answer. "I am here." And in that breath, you feel something clear. You are no longer running. You are arriving. Outside, the world is still loud, still fighting, still trying to prove something. But you no longer need to play that part. You choose to stand apart, not out of pride, but because you know there's nothing left to win. You just want to live real, love real, and be fully present in every moment. Now, you understand awakening isn't about chasing light. It's realizing the light never left. It was only hidden by fear, by pretending, by the endless shoulds. When all of that falls away, the light remains soft, warm, enough to guide you home, and you smile. Not because everything is perfect, but because, finally, you feel real. You know the road ahead is still long with bright days and dark ones, but you no longer seek escape, because every step, no matter where it leads, is a step toward home. In the end, life isn't a journey of becoming someone. It's a journey of unbecoming everything you're not. Only then do you truly begin to live. Thank you for staying with me until the very end of this story. If this message touched your heart, please give it a like, subscribe to the channel, and turn on the notification bell so you'll never miss the next journey we take together. Your support means the world to me.